Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. And let's see. Well, welcome, fellow Toastmasters and guests. The meeting of Online Presenters Toastmasters Club has now begun. Guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a former or current active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 Toastmasters official speeches. However, if you have substantial relevant presentation experience, you may apply for membership after demonstrating your abilities in a 2 to 3 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to approval by the members of our club. If you've not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and role if you have one. Just hover over your video, right-click the 3 dots, and select Rename. We have members and guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video and audio contribution may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. And now, please welcome our club president, Marianne Grady.
Why, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Online Presenters. Online Presenters is a club that serves those who give presentations professionally or those who aspire to do so. So if you're thinking about getting on screen there, you're in the right place. Now, if you were here with us last week, you got to see our webinar contest, the second edition of it. And we're having 3 different editions that lead up to a 4th and final championship round. So Louise Brovin and Andres Malenko came in 1st and 2nd, and they will go on to the championship round in October. We're also having another round in September 16th. So if anyone is interested in participating in that webinar contest, please see the website for details, and it will be on September 16th. I think we are still looking for a few participants. Now, guests, I wanted to know, why are you in Toastmasters and why are you here? So Patrick, can you tell us that?
I'd be delighted. I first got into Toastmasters because I wanted to learn how to speak in front of an audience as a hopefully, knock on wood, soon to be published author. I wanted to be able to get up in front of a small audience and talk about said published book. Why am I here today? Well, Dr. Michael and I and others are in a club together, Dungeons and Toast, and he mentioned this meeting and the purpose of it, and it sounded very interesting. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. You're welcome here. Michael Cohen, tell us why Toastmasters and why are you here?
In 1990, my company, the Internal Revenue Service, boo, yes, I know, introduced their chapter of Toastmasters. Acting, singing in front of crowds since I was 9. So as a natural born ham, I gave it a try. However, the club quickly went out and debunked in 2021 after the COVID epidemic more apparent and Zoom became more prevalent. I found an opportunity and rejoined. I'm from Dungeons and Toast as well. The reason for my rather odd background is when we at Dungeons and Toast are guests in another group, we call that a raid as in fun. So, raid.
Oh,
Back
that's
to
funny.
you.
Okay, I like that. Kelly, tell us why Toastmasters and why are you here with us tonight?
Sure, thank you. I chose Toastmasters 5 years ago because I was newly promoted at work and wanted to learn how to speak in front of a large audience, train a lot of people, and speak in front of executives without turning in my chair or fiddling or not breathing, which was a common thing I did before Toastmasters. And then I stayed because of the relationships I made.
Well, I'm happy to see you tonight. Welcome. Now, Kenneth, how about you? What brings you to us tonight?
Very similar. I started with Toastmasters in 2009. I was invited by one of my colleagues at work. I worked for the state, and I let me repeat that. I visited several clubs in one area. There were 5 clubs, at that time, 4 clubs in one area that later became the 5th Sacramento Green Speakers, and they're all in the same 24-story building. 25-story building. So I've been a member since 2009. In 2021, I believe, 21, the Sacramento Green Speakers closed during COVID, and I was looking for another club. I found later River City Toastmasters, and somebody mentioned Dungeons and Toast. So I looked up online and went and visited in March, or not in March, for on a Friday, and I joined on a Monday. And I'm here also as part of the raid.
Man who knows what he wants. Greg, what brings you to us tonight?
I joined in 2015. I was a newly promoted supervisor at Ford, and I had a friend who had been telling me for years all these interesting stories about Toastmasters and area contests and all these various things. And when I became a supervisor, he was the first one I hired because he had exactly the skill set I needed. And he said, "Hey, Greg, would you like to be able to better articulate your strategies? Would you like to be able to listen better? Would you like to be able to speak spontaneously?" I said, "Oh, that sounds great." He said, "Great, join Toastmasters." So I was in Toastmasters after that, and I have been ever since. I've got a DTM. And what brings me today is the same raid as other people from Dungeons and Toast.
Well, glad you can make it to join us tonight.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank
let
you.
me see. Oh, Michael Alexander. I believe you're still enjoying guest status, right?
I'm glad to have brought all of these people here. And I strongly believe in cross-fertilization. How did I get involved in Toastmasters? Well, very simply, I was an actor, and I wanted to go back and get my PhD. And I realized I couldn't get my PhD while working full-time and be involved in the theater. You can't do a little bit of theater. It's like the drapes being a little bit on fire. But Toastmasters gave me a chance to continue to have contact with my audience, but in bite-sized segments, and that's how I started. Joined a club which I loved, which I'm actually back in touch with thanks to Zoom. And I've stayed around for 33 years.
Well, we are happy you joined us tonight and that you brought all your friends. So thank you for that, Michael. Now, I see Claudia joined us. Claudia, tell us, what brings you to us tonight?
Let me turn my audio on. Hi. So I joined Toastmasters. I went to Toastmasters meetings in Iowa and Wisconsin and never joined. And that was like a lifetime ago. And then in 2019, I was living in Port Townsend, Washington, and I just walked into a meeting because I knew that in order to increase business, I had to have an online presence. I had to start doing videos, and I thought, well, let's go polish up your act. And I loved it. We had such a good time, and it was right when COVID hit. So then everybody on the peninsula was switching over to Zoom and figuring out Zoom and everything. And so I stuck with it for quite a while until I changed careers. And then I had to take a hiatus because it took all my time. And then I got laid off 5 months later, right in the beginning of the tech crunch where everybody was getting laid off. It was like, okay, so fast forward, I was part of Women in Tech US chapter, which is part of a global organization. And in one of the events at UW, I met the founder of Udly. And I don't know if you know Udly or not. Okay, so that's how I found this meeting, was through Udly. So haven't really used it a lot, but I'm really looking forward to learning about it. And when they said, oh, this is our Toastmasters meeting or something, I was like, oh, you do Toastmasters? I love Toastmasters. That's how I got here.
Well, we're glad you're here. And Joni, our Vice President of Education, is a Udly ambassador, and I believe Sunny is as well. So you're in the right place. Now, we're going to get ready to get this meeting on the road, but I did want to let everybody know that next week on the 29th, we will have a special guest speaker on elevated evaluations, and that is Jack Levitt. He is an executive coach and author and also a DTM. So please don't miss it. He's a great evaluator. With that, I will move on and introduce our Toastmaster of the day, the man who wears many hats, Jim Barber, Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Barber. I'm your Toastmaster for this evening, and let's just jump right into it. As you may have gathered by looking around, the theme of tonight is the return of Hat Day. I call it that because we have done Hat Day themes several times before. This is another time. It was either Son of Hat Day or Return of Hat Day. I opted for Return of Hat Day. Now the question is, why do the Return of Hat Day? It's not because I have a limited imagination, although that is widely reported, but I have an affinity for hat and hat days at Online Presenters, because for one reason, we are more visually oriented than many Toastmasters clubs. And so a hat is a nice way to do that. Also, by the very nature of our Brady Bunch layout, it's difficult to stand out when you have a large group of people. And so a hat is a nice way to kind of bring some individuality to the whole thing. Hence, Return of Hat Day. The word of the day that you may choose to use sometime throughout the meeting is hat. That is because I have a limited imagination. I couldn't think of a better word. I figured we'd just go with hat. I know it's an unusual word, but see if you can work it into your various operations tonight. Now we are starting the meeting, I think, with a tip of the day. However, she's not listed on her thingy there, so I'm going to have to ask her. Joni, are you providing us with a tip tonight? Where are you, Joni? I've lost you. There you are.
I am.
Cool. Take it away then, please.
Have you ever been in a Toastmasters meeting and abruptly it says, meeting has ended by the host? Has this ever happened to you before? Have we gone through this? Well, today my tip is simply going to be how to make a co-host and how to hand over your host to someone else. Our participant screen is our best friend. Why is that? Because we can do almost anything from the participant screen. Now, for today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing 3 dots, and all you have to do is remove co-host. I'm doing it so I can give it back to him here. Find or locate the person that you want to make co-host. Look in the 3 dots, and you can either make co-host or make host. Now, why am I emphasizing this? I'm host. If I have to leave for any reason, then what would happen is I don't see leave here. I see end. And if I do that, then everybody goes home with a prompt that says meeting has ended by the host. So always remember, when you're being host, if you're going to leave, make sure you find someone to pass it on. After all, the after party is always the fun. Or two, if you fall off, like I sometimes do, my internet, like me, is just a tad unstable. You have to make sure that others have been made co-hosts. That way, somebody can take it up if anything happens. That's your tip of the day. Back to you, our Toastmaster of the day.
That's a great tip, Joni. Thank you. That was, I learned something there. I have a question for you before you leave, though. If you make let's say you have several co-hosts and you make somebody a host, do all the co-hosts go away?
No, the co-hosts actually remain. And this is the thing, by making them co-host, if you fall off for any reason, one of them will automatically get host so the meeting can continue.
Great. Okay. That is useful. We've had that to happen. I hope it won't happen anymore. Thank you very much, Joni. All right. Let's look at, we've got some other people that are helping out at the meeting tonight. Let's take a look at what they are doing. For example, Sarah Idahan is our timer this evening. Sarah, what will you be doing?
Thank you, Jim. Tonight I'll be keeping time all throughout the meeting. It's important that we present our speeches within the time that's allotted, and the timer helps you do that. For our speeches, we will have 5 to 7 minutes. At 5 minutes, you will see the green, at 6, yellow, and at 7, red, and then you have 30 seconds to wrap it up. When we have the table topics, those will be 1 to 2 minutes. So at 1 minute, you'll have green, 1.5 yellow, and at 2 minutes, you'll see red. At the evaluation of the speakers, those are 3 minutes. So at 2 minutes, you'll see green, 2.5 yellow, and at 3 minutes red, and you have 30 seconds to wrap it up. When asked to do so, I'll be putting in the chat, or either when asked, I'll present it to the Toastmaster. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And by the way, I like your hat. It's very pretty. All right. I've been looking around for Carrie Kong. I know she was here a moment ago, but Carrie, have I lost you? I don't see
you lost me.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I see you now. Okay, it's the in front that was fooling me. Okay, cool. Kara, you're the Wizard of Oz tonight. Would you please tell us what you're going to be doing?
So for our counter, usually, I use a lot of and That's why I need to correct yourself, and I need to take note of everyone's usage as well. For our counter is to note every overused words or filler words such as and, well, but, so, are, or any other things that's too repetitive. And then I will give a report at the end of today. So watch out for your owls and let's improve together. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you, Carrie. All right. Dr. Andy Byrne is the cool cat in the hat. He is also the grammarian this evening. Andy, what are you going to be doing?
Thank you for the question, Jim. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be listening, active listening to everybody's speech to see if they use the word hat. In my case, the Cat in the Hat from Dr. Seuss up in New Hampshire is where he was from at Dartmouth. But we all have lots of different hats, and there is a brochure for Toastmasters saying that we wear many hats. And I'll let you think about that and talk about it later.
Cool. Thank you, Andy. All right. The watcher this evening, Michael Alexander. Michael, you're our resident stalker. What will you be doing this evening?
No good speech works without a good audience. My job is to see what kind of audience we are, to see who's visible, who's responding, who's dark, and generally who can make a better situation for everybody involved. And I will, of course, give a tip of the hat to those who do it well and shield my eyes from those who do not.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Right. Marianne Grady, you are our El Presidente, but you are also the chat monitor this evening. Would you please illuminate us as to what the duties of the chat monitor are?
It's my job to see what's going on in that chat column, and it's already been pretty busy so far. And at the end of the night, I will report back. So please chat it up, babies. Back to you, Jim.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. And finally, our vote counter this evening is Joni Renee Laidlaw. Joni, as the vote counter, would you please explain to those of us who can't figure it out what you will be doing this evening? Are you here, Joni? I seem to have lost Joni somewhere. Okay.
There she goes. She said that her internet was flaky. Now we know.
Now we know. Okay. Joni will probably rejoin us, but if she does not for some reason, we will find another way of tallying the votes. We don't need to worry about it until after our speakers this evening, so we will simply proceed. But speaking of which, the agenda list, we have 3 speakers this evening. That was a cutie thing. We'll explain a little later what it is. We actually have 2 speakers this evening, and so we will now move to the speaker portion of our meeting, if everybody is prepared, other than Joni. I think you are. Okay, we'll do it then. Our first speaker this evening is David F. Carr. This is cool. David is speaking from the Visionary Communication Level 5 path. Visionary Communication path, rather, Level 5, demonstrating expertise. Reflect on your path. 10 to 12 minutes. Is 10 to 12 minutes still valid, David?
More or less. We'll see.
10 to 12 minutes with a 5-minute deviation?
Yeah, 10, 15-minute deviation would be good.
Okay.
How about that?
Oh, it sounds good to me. Work it out with the timer. All right. In speech 1 of this project, delivered a couple of years ago, I outlined a plan. This is David speaking. David outlined a plan for improving the documentation and training resources supporting the Toastmasters project. Very little has gone according to plan, but I'm still learning. David this evening is going to tell us what he has been up to. Take it away, David Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Let's get this over with. I don't think, maybe that's probably not the way you're supposed to introduce the reflect on your path speech. Actually, the whole introduction that Jim read is a leftover from when this was going to be part 2 of the Level 5 project, where you're supposed to come in, and in part 1, you describe your vision, and in part 2, you explain what a fantastic success that vision has been. I gave part 1 of that project in August of 2020. And it was called the WordPress for Toastmasters Documentation Project. And the idea was I was going to pull together a team of people who would help me document this software that I've been working on for a number of years. It's a series of add-ons to the WordPress web publishing system that allow you to do agenda management. There's some things about the styling of the sites and making sure they're brand compliant that is in there too. But what I've discovered over the years is that even though to me, I say, WordPress is so easy, and it is far more capable than that free toast thing that they're giving you to work on. Lonnie, who's here someplace, she said nice things about it over the years. She's actually introduced some software to it. But what I find is that there actually is a lot to learn, and that people do need some educational materials to develop along the way. And so it would be nice to have a team. I do not have a team. Back in August 2020, I had a member of Online Presenters who was going to do her high performance leadership project. And part of it was going to be us working together on improving this documentation. A few months down the line, she decided she had better things to do with her time, or she didn't have time to invest in that, or it just came apart at the seams. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I meant well. I really did. But I'll show you a couple of things quickly, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. There is a WordPress for Toastmasters website that has some documentation. And originally I was just adding it through the blog over time. Now there's this whole knowledge-based thing where you can come in and learn how to add an agenda or learn whatever it is. But I have written 99% of this stuff. And I don't really have time to develop the software and document the software. I still need a team. I still need this thing that I described back in August of 2020 still ought to happen, but I haven't figured out how to inspire people to chip in on it. One thing that I did instead is there actually is a whole 6-part course in how to work with the software, and it goes through the basics of how to set up one of these sites, how to customize your homepage, how to set up your agenda, and eventually it gets into a little bit about search engine optimization and sharing on social media. And so I learned a lot through doing that, but I did it all myself. Pretty much all myself. I think I think I reached out to a few people and had them review pieces of it. Some of these things started out as speeches at Online Presenters or in some other context or in a training course, and they kind of got refined into being this more polished piece of video. I mean, you can look at them yourself and tell me whether they actually are polished, but I actually did put a lot of work into this. But for reflect on your path is supposed to be reflecting on the entire path. And I feel a little bit like another guy named David Carr, who I used to get confused with. There's a David Carr, now deceased, who was the media critic for the New York Times. And I would get confused with him from time to time because I was writing about the internet and sometimes he would write about the internet or the web. And so we were overlapped just a little bit. Never met the guy. Don't know that much about him, except that I did read his book. But his book was about his life as a drug addict. And so it was an autobiography, but he was so zonked out on drugs for most of the period that he was writing about that he had to go back and interview his friends and find out what he was doing during that period of time. And so the book is called Night of the Gun because the title comes from a night where he was apparently waving a gun at his friends. And he's like, really, me? I had a gun? I pointed it at somebody? I don't remember any of that. All right, my experience is not quite that bad, but I did have to dig back through the Online Presenters archives to see my old speeches, where they were listed out, and to find out. I knew it had been a long time ago that I gave part 1 of that speech, but I had to look back at the records to see that it was actually August of 2020. And this is where I fell off the Pathways bandwagon, I guess, because I wasn't ready to come back and give that second speech. I finally did it a couple of weeks ago. I did it at my home club because they were short a speaker that day. And so I'll just do it. I'll just do it. And I'm doing the same thing tonight. I'll just do it. I'll complete the reflect on my path because it's something I need to check off on the list. I really did want to cancel my speech tonight, but I'm here anyways because I've got to get it out of the way. And so what did I learn in the visionary communication path, you know, I'm kind of vague on the details, actually. I mean, there was a speech in there that was about learning to lead, and a lot of it was about learning to lead in this club, organizing the team, figuring out what I should do myself and what I should delegate. I learned some stuff along the way. And I'm not sure how much of it actually had to do with learning from the Pathways program per se. You know, I've given an awful lot of speeches and webinars and demonstrations over the past few years. I haven't been great about getting credit for that stuff along the way. And if I complete this speech, if I make it through, I think I'm supposed to speak for 10 to 12 minutes. As I said, it's kind of vague because I'm going in with this without a lot of a plan. But assuming I complete this, this will be the first path that I've completed. You know, I was leading this club to charter in 2017 when the Pathways program was just getting started. People like Graham have lapped me multiple times by doing multiple paths and going through the cycle. But I had already earned my DTM, and I was told early on that DTM stood for Don't Time Me, which is the joke about, but the truth behind it is that once you're a DTM, you get a little bit arrogant. You have trouble seeing the point of things that don't necessarily have a point for you. I never saw the point of necessarily earning a second DTM. I didn't think that would do that much for my resume. I knew that actually it would earn points from my club. So occasionally I could be persuaded to go in and finish a couple of projects, finish a level so that my club could get some points. But in terms of intrinsic motivation, I tend to think more about, what do I want to speak about? What's a topic I'd like to address? And then 5 minutes before the meeting is to begin, I might look at the Pathways program and figure out where does that fit into Pathways. So I am a terrible example to anybody who wants to make progress in Pathways. I'm a terrible example for your VP of Education and your president who want to win awards and make progress and dazzle the world with how wonderful Online Presenters is. But for me, the point of Toastmasters is about learning and learning by doing and learning through feedback from my evaluator, from my peers in my club, in the club, from my fellow officers, from my friends. And so I learned a lot along the way completing the visionary communication path because it's taken me 4 or 5 years at least, probably even a little bit worse than that. And I've learned a lot thanks to all of you, and I do appreciate it. So thanks for putting up with me. I know it's a lot sometimes, but I'll try and do better. I'll try to do better. That's kind of what I'm doing by trying to complete this path. Maybe I can get my way back on the straight and narrow. You know, fortunately, I've done it just because I'm distractible and erratic, not because I'm high on heroin. And so I don't think I'll have to go back around to you again to explain to me what it is that I have done and what my own autobiography is. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, David. And as someone who has spent his life, based his life on serving as a bad example, I think that you have done a wonderful job in showing us how not to do it. That is a very valuable lesson. That's a great thing to do. I think we'll keep you around because despite your various flaws and shortcomings, nevertheless, you've got some good things going for you as well. You are definitely worth it. Before we proceed any further, let's see, has Joni shown up? She has not. Joni, okay, Joni is a victim of the internet. The problem is Joni, who was our tip master this evening, is also our next evaluator. Is anybody feeling underused this evening, underappreciated? Would anybody like to step up and evaluate Joni's presentation? Not everybody at once. In that case, I will do it. I'm sorry, did I see a hand? Greg? Or Mary Ann, either one.
Let Greg do it.
Greg, you want to evaluate evaluate Joni's presentation?
Sure.
That would be terrific. Thank you very much, sir. All right. So Greg will be evaluating our next presentation. And let's see, we're getting, okay.
He's not
And-
evaluating Joni, he's evaluating Traca, right?
I realized that after I said it, that I'd said something wrong, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. Yes, thank you. Greg will be evaluating Traca for Joni, who is absent without leave. Okay, now I think I got it straight. Our second, third, last, and also other presenter this evening is Traca Savadogo. Traca, let's see, is presenting from Presentation Mastery Level 4, Building Skills, Managing a Difficult Audience. 12 to 15 minutes. Traca, is that still standing? 12 to 15? You got it? All right. Traca will be speaking this evening on the movie of your life. Today, we'll take a deep dive, reflecting on our lives, the choices we make, and the direction we're headed. Embracing both triumphs and challenges, Traca will encourage us to step boldly into the future. Please help me welcome Traca Savadogo. That's Traca, not Tracy, sorry.
Story of my life. People have been messing up my name my whole life. Hold on just 1 second. I want to keep a timer for myself here, but I know I can do it private. I'll just keep it going. So lights, camera, action. Imagine we go to a movie theater, red velvet chairs, the smell of popcorn, the lights go down, and suddenly we're in the theater and it's the movie of your life. I want to ask you, how good was that movie? Sometimes I think it's not the movie I intended to. I often tap into my 15-year-old self and I'm like, dude, you were supposed to be living on Park Avenue in New York, shopping at Berghoff's. What the heck happened to you? And so I started to think about how I got to this place and where I want to pivot to. And suddenly it came to me, I am the writer, the director, and the editor of this life that I've built. And I'm the chief storyteller. I can change the direction of this story anytime I want. So when COVID happened, I was living in Seattle. 9 months of rain there, people. It's really beautiful, but only for 3 months out of the year. And so I hopped in my car and I went looking for a new future for myself. Where do I want to go? I don't know. I've been traveling internationally most of my life. I didn't know the United States all that well. I ended up on a 7-week road trip, hopping from city to city. Is this my place? Is this my place? Is this my place? Are these my people? I don't know. And then suddenly I was on Craigslist and I saw an apartment that looked too beautiful for words. I'm like, what is this amazing miracle of a place? Clearly that price is a typo. It turned out that apartment was not in San Diego. It was across the border in Mexico. And I was tired and road weary. And I was like, it's time to have an adventure. There's no way in hell I'm moving to Mexico, but let me just go check out this place. It looks incredible. So I met the guy in his little red pickup truck. I finally found the road. I drive up this cobblestone road. I'm looking around. beautiful white houses overlooking the ocean. I'm like, what kind of miracle place is this? And then we pull up to the place and I'm like, okay. And we come down the stairs and we walk in the door. Huge high ceilings, wrap-around windows, the Pacific Ocean off to the side, and islands off in the distance, uninhabited islands. And I'm like, where's the lease? It's like, you haven't even been to town yet. And I was like, I just survived COVID. Come on, we've all been in our houses. I want a better house to be in if I got to stay at home more. So you have internet, you have gas, you have a grocery store. I'm good. We're totally fine. And then I decided, I'm like, okay, well, that worked. I put up my blew up mattress in the corner and I was like, I'll figure out furniture and all that other stuff later. But then I just started thinking, what would an awesome life really look like? Like if I'm going to totally reinvent myself, I had none of my furniture, none of all the boxes I've been dragging around for the last 20 years that have never been unpacked. You know, you guys probably have those, right? I was just dumbfounded. Like, what would that life be if I could shake the Etch-a-Sketch and start all over and create it my own destiny? Exactly what would that look like? Right? Like I'm not living somebody else's dream. This is my dream. And at the end of my life, I'm only accountable for the story that I wrote. Right? And I realized there were times in my life I didn't even know I was the leading lady. I certainly didn't show up like it. I was like unnamed girl at a desk somewhere. Right? And ladies, I don't know about you, but I dated men that didn't even have leading man potential. Like I tried to make them leading men. They didn't even have the stuff. Like they didn't even have the raw material to become a leading man. I was like, what are you thinking? So now I use that as a framework for the decisions that I make. Does this person belong in my movie? Does this thing that I'm doing belong in my movie? How is this thing that I'm doing advancing my story and getting me to where I want to go? Toastmasters definitely has played a huge role in that. And I'm so grateful for it. And so the other thing that I think a lot about is what's this story? Like if I'm fascinated, I worked with a company that did end of life stuff. And I started thinking about what's my obituary going to say? I love reading obituaries because people say the most wonderful things about people, whether they were actually nice or not, whether they were good humans or not. They just say all these beautiful things, right? But it's a tally of everything you've done in your life. And so one day I took an opportunity and I wrote my own obituary. What do I want it to say? Seriously, like what would be the coolest thing with the gift that you've been given to be on this earth? We talked earlier about our bucket list things, but like really, I'm in charge of what happens next. What's going to be on there? I've already done some really cool things. Like I've backpacked solo in 20 countries. I gave a TEDx talk that now lives on the TEDx website. I'm like, oh, but you know what? It would be really cool to go to the main TED.com, like a conference, right? That would be really cool.
Wow. I mean, wow. I love what you're saying. I really agree. I'd love to be in your shoes. I mean, how did you get to be where you are? I mean, I'm just so excited. Oh, wow. Congratulations. Happy birthday and all that. Girl, you got it going on. You got it going on. People, do you hear what she's talking about?
I can't wait to talk to you later about that. Let's one-on-one a little bit later, okay?
Okay.
All of your dreams, girlfriend. All of them. So I'm curious though, like thinking about what are your dreams? And you know what I realized is that not going for my dreams, I was the one that was the helper. I would help anybody achieve their dreams. And I realized that by doing that, I didn't have skin in the game. I wasn't accountable for that uncomfortable feeling that would come up when you're just like doubting yourself. I didn't have to experience that. I just had to like pep somebody up and like put them out on stage, like, you go do this fabulous, wonderful thing. Like, and I set it all up for them. But I had to learn how to get over my own discomfort by being vulnerable, by being visible, by just having
I
to
think it's
fail.
really, really hard to, just kind of drop everything and not have all those responsibilities and just kind of do that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't think I could ever do that.
Well, you know what? I tend to tap into that 15-year-old side of me, like before I had bills and before I had responsibilities. And I was like, I was definitely had my head in the clouds back then. And sometimes we just got to reel it back in and get those good vibes going again. So, yeah, I totally understand that. I was that way too. And, it's the breathing new life into the dreams, right? Like I was like, hey, wait a minute. There was a time, I'll tell you, there was a time I was so depressed. My friend sent me to a depression study and they put me on some medication to hopefully help with my depression. And they kicked me out of the study because I was too depressed and I was throwing their data off. And I was like, 4 years later, now I'm living in Mexico, got a view of the water. And I'm like, oh man, if only I knew back then that life could change dramatically when we start making a couple really important decisions. So I want to encourage you to think about, what is the movie of your life? Where is your story going? What needs an edit? Maybe we need to kick some people to the curb who are screwing up your story. Maybe we need to think about like being the director and taking that director seat and taking it into somewhere amazing. Like capture that 15-year-old side of you that had big dreams and big ideas before life kind of kicked you in the teeth and, things didn't always work out so well. So I want to encourage you to take a moment and think about being in the director's seat. What's that obituary going to say? And how extraordinary can it be? Thank you very much. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day.
Thank you, Traca. Thank you. That was great. All right. Let's see. Joni has not shown up, so we need a vote counter. Who feels like being a vote counter this evening? We've got 2 votes coming in, so it's not going to require high math skills. Anybody? Okay, then I can't read the name there, but I appreciate that. Claudia, okay, Claudia, you're going to be our vote counter? That would be so cool. Thank you so much. Would everybody please pass your votes for the better of the 2 speakers that we had this evening, David or Traca, and send them by private chat to Claudia, who is listed as guest Claudia Dubé. Okay? If you would please do that, I would appreciate it. While you are doing that, I will now move to the second portion of our meeting, which is table topics. Graham Carrs is going to do a different sort of table topics presentation this evening, and I think he's going to tell us all about it. So, Graham, take it away. It's already tomorrow there.
Indeed it is. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, everybody, and welcome from tomorrow. No matter how bad your Monday is, I can't say it gets better, but it definitely gets over because I'm living in tomorrow, at least from your perspective, being as I am in Australia. Now, I'm the Table Topics Master. I don't need to explain what Table Topics is because I have explained Table Topics to our only non-Toastmaster guest and everybody else here. While you may not be members of this club, you are Toastmasters, so you do know. What you may not know is that tonight I am your Topics Master and I'm doing this as a project, the Effective Listening Project. The idea is I have to respond to each of your presentations and use that somehow to link into the next presentation, which could be fun. Also, because there are, in fact, 8 guests here tonight and we are running behind time, you're all guests or visitors, you're all going to get a table topic, but I'm only going to ask you to speak for 60 seconds. So, Madam Timekeeper, if we can have lights at 40 seconds, 50 seconds, and 60 seconds, you only have to speak for 60 seconds, and there you go. So that's how we'll do table topics tonight. And our first table topics presenter tonight, normally I would introduce the topic and then call on the guest, but because we have to turn microphones on and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to say who's going to be the participants. And our first one is Greg. So Greg, for 60 seconds, can you please tell us what was your favorite holiday? What was your favorite holiday, Greg?
Mr. Table Topics Master, without a doubt, my favorite holiday was when we were in Kenya when I was 4 years old for my father's dissertation. He was doing research there, and for Christmas, my grandmother flew from Southern Illinois, which is near nothing, to Kenya. Not even the big parts of Kenya, but a very small town north of that called Nyeri. And for my fourth Christmas, my grandmother was there with me, and we didn't have a big celebration or anything, but having her there made it memorable, something that I still remember to these days. My grandmother was one of my favorite people in the world, and having her there made it much more like the home that I'm used to. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much for that, and a fabulous holiday, that no doubt, and very memorable, obviously. The first dissertation, that suggests, of course, passing college. And once you've finished college, then you've got to go out and work. So Michael Cohen, for you, our question is, tell us about your first job, either out of college or perhaps you worked before then. But tell us about your first job, Michael Cohen.
Thank you. I was 14 years old. I worked at a place on what's called Vanderbilt Parkway, which is within walking distance of my house. It was called Electromotive. I was a maintenance person. In short, I cleaned the garbage, but it was a job. And in a way, I enjoyed it. I didn't mind doing what people call menial work, but I felt like and I was receiving money so that I could do what I wanted to do. From there, I did other jobs. Unfortunately, no longer had a use for a part-time employee at Electromotives. So I worked in McDonald's, Friendly, all sorts of restaurants. I was at Modell's, and then I ended up for the rest of my career in the internal. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Michael. So a range of jobs there, but I think that the first one, working in custodial work, or what do we call when you're a janitor and a cleaner? Whatever it is. As a teenager, I'm pretty sure you probably had your favorite tunes that you would listen to while you were doing the cleaning. And that brings us to our next question, which goes to Patrick. Patrick, you're next on my list. And Patrick, I want you to tell me about your favorite song. So for 60 seconds, Patrick, please tell us about your favorite song. You'll need to unmute and turn on your mic. No, Patrick. In that case, I will move on to Kenneth. Kenneth, you're next. Can you tell us about your favorite song, please?
Hello, fellow Toastmasters, presenters, and Dungeons and Toast. One of my favorite songs as a kid was, I think it was more along the lines of the sound and the rhythm and the flow. We had joy, we had seasons in the sun. Everyone remember that one? And then I heard it in a movie or a TV show that came out later. I think it was a movie. And it was the theme song for the serial killer. So he was having fun. He was having joy. He was having seasons in the sun with people. Now that killed my favorite song. I had to find a new one. And after that, I've still been looking for a new one. So if anybody has an idea that I could use for a favorite song that doesn't lie in some deep, dark basement, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Yeah, Seasons in the Sun, Terry Jacks was an interesting song. It was about dying. And then it later became a song about serial killers. Yeah, well, that's a fair achievement to manage to cover that sort of scope. Talking of fair achievements, Kelly, can you tell us what was your last major achievement? And please don't say you turned into a serial killer. But Kelly, what was your last major achievement?
I must say that had I turned into a serial killer, that would be quite the achievement. I would hope. I am an overachiever. However, my actual last great achievement, there are either too many or not enough. I'm not sure which. So I'll go with one medium, highly on the higher side of mediocre. I created a report at work that is very exciting for me, a data analyst, but probably not exciting for other people. But that's just the hat I wear. I created a report that took several different reports and combined them into one. Beyond that, it has approximately 48 tables that at a click of a button, they all copy and paste over so we can have 12-month trends. And when I say tables for any other Excel nerds, they're not actual tables. It's a big file, but not as big as it would be. Back to you.
Thanks, Kelly. I really wish I could introduce you to one of my fellow Toastmasters here in Brisbane, Australia. She is a data nerd par excellence, and in fact has presented data nerd speeches, which are surprisingly awesome. Talking of surprisingly awesome, Kaylee, I know you're not a Toastmaster, but we have talked about this, and you said you wouldn't mind doing this. Kayla, could you tell us if you were going to be presenting a TED Talk that was surprisingly awesome, what would be your TED Talk topic? So what would be your TED Talk topic, Kayla?
Hey, nice to meet you guys. So if I were to present a TED Talk topic and it would be surprisingly awesome, I would have to draw upon something very near and dear to my heart, which is pets, specifically working with dogs and working with reactive dogs. So I think that it is a very interesting topic that would work really well for a TED Talk because it is a very common struggle that a lot of people deal with. And I think that it has a lot of applicability to a lot of other areas as well. So for example, we often tell dogs when when they're working with dogs to reward the dog when they see another dog. And that might seem counterintuitive because the dog is barking. And the analogy that one can give is that if a child had a nightmare and you hugged them, they're not more likely to have a nightmare. When you reward a dog and change their perspective on the other dog, they're not more likely to start to react. Yeah, so because of that, I think that it could be really interesting.
I think that would be fascinating. Thank you, Kayla. That would actually be a really interesting TED Talk. I would, for one, would go along and check that out because learning about how to deal with animals and with people is a great skill. Subject of skills. Welcome back, Patrick. For you, what is a skill that you think you've probably lost? So a skill you had that you think you've probably lost. Patrick, for 60 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Topics Master. What skill have I probably lost? I noticed that when I was younger, I used to be better at listening. And by that, I mean, I was more patient and more focused in the act of listening, and which I think was a good thing. It had pluses and minuses, more listening, less talking. But I think as I've shifted along the spectrum now, as I've grown as a person, it's hopefully more balanced. At least I am aware when I think, just my subjective opinion, that I'm talking too much, and I will hopefully say at that point, I think I'm talking too much. I want to hear what you think now. And that is it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, it's one of those skills that learning to listen is a great skill. Sometimes we forget to listen. But it used to be Toastmasters had a theme a tagline: better listening, better thinking, better speaking. And it was in fact in that order, because you had to listen before you could think, and then you had to think before you could speak. Sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we lie to ourselves about listening, when in fact all we are doing is waiting for the chance to interrupt. What's the biggest lie that you once believed was true? Lonnie, can you tell us, what's the biggest lie that you once believed was true?
Well, let me think about that, because my first response is not appropriate for a Toastmasters club, especially among a bunch of people I don't know very well. A lie that I used to think was true was Santa Claus. And in fact, I believed in Santa Claus far, far too long. I think I was 12 or 13 years old when my grandfather finally broke the news to me, when he couldn't believe that I still believed in Santa Claus, that Santa Claus was not real. But I think deep down in my heart, I knew the truth, but I just didn't want to let it go. Now, as an adult, I have the good fortune to also be a mom, and my husband and I talked about it before we had children, and we resolved to not tell our child that fabrication. Yes, I know it's magical, it's special, but we really wanted to establish a family policy of always telling one another the truth. Now, I understand recently that my son has not always told me the truth. This was a shock to me, but maybe that's like believing in Santa Claus. In any case, that was the lie that I used to believe that I thankfully no longer believe.
Lonnie, thank you very much for that. And what do you mean there's no Santa Claus? I don't know. Oh, this is a surprise to me. Next, you'll tell me there's no Easter Bunny. I know there's no Tooth Fairy because I'm wearing false teeth and I didn't get any coins under my pillow when that happened. No, all I got was paint. There is only one guest here or visitor who hasn't had a table topic, and that's Claudia. Claudia, you get to escape today only because you are vote counter, and it would be most unfortunate if you had to count votes where everybody said you were the best, which would have been the case, I know. So we will leave table topics there, and I'll hand control back to the Toastmaster, Jim Barber.
Thank you so much, Graham, the voice of the future. And now my part of the meeting is pretty much done. I am happy to pass control of the meeting to, as general evaluator, to Dr. Sonny Fridge. So Sonny, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day. And I just want to say that everyone, welcome to this general evaluation portion of the meeting where we get to test our listening skills, and we're listening, and hats off to you all. What a great theme today. So as a general evaluator, what I will be doing is not doing it alone. I have a team. I have speech evaluators and a tag team, timer, odd counter, grammarian. But wait, there's more. I'll tell you about it in just a moment. First, let us deal with the speech evaluations. Our first speech evaluator is Sherry Blake, who will be evaluating the speech of DTM David Cairns. Please help me welcome Sherry Blake to the virtual stage.
Thank you so much for that, Sonny. I'm very honored to be evaluating David. He gave a really great speech. His speech was 10 to 12 minutes, which that's a long time to be speaking and to be able to, pull it off. So David's speech was learning from what didn't work and also learning about stuff along the way. He provided the importance of learning from past failures. David, your topic was not only timely, but also relevant to our personal and professional lives. So some of your strengths were, you started by defining what it means to develop a vision. You moved into examples of where things didn't work, and you concluded with lessons learned. This organization made it easy to follow and understand your key points. The examples that you shared about your own experiences were engaging and relatable. They effectively illustrated your points and kept the audience, well, it kept me engaged. So for instance, your story about giving a lot of speeches without no credit well, you should be a DTM probably 10 times over, right? Well, you did highlight the point of whether you should achieve another DTM or just forgo it. But I'm sure you realize, even though you decide to forgo it, every time you give a speech, you are becoming a better speaker, even if there's no award, right? Areas of improvement. I am so big on standing, standing and presence. So while your content was strong, delivering your speech while standing could enhance your presence and impact and be more impactful. So standing allows you to use more dynamic body language, even like your gestures. Like I was only able to see like half of them coming up on the screen. So if you were standing, maybe I would have been able to, see your gestures a little better. And then also, possibly it could have projected your voice more effectively. You mentioned that you learned a lot and you wanted to know, you said that you learned a lot, and I wanted to actually know, well, what was it that you learned? Because you mentioned that at the end. So maybe next time, share a few examples of what you actually learned. You said something about learning by doing. I learned a lot. So my thought was, well, tell me, what did you learn? So in conclusion, David, you delivered a compelling speech that not only demonstrated your expertise, but also provided valuable insights into what you learned from what didn't work out. and you're developing a vision of learning from your past failures. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your wisdom with us today. And I really enjoyed your speech. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you so much for that great evaluation. Hats off to you for delivering it very effectively. Our second speech evaluator will be evaluating Traca. And I believe it is Greg Stockton. Greg, welcome to the virtual stage. It is you.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Woo-hoo.
Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Traca. I was very happy to have thrown my hat in the ring as an evaluator because that was an absolutely delightful speech. The theme of the movie of your life caught me because my movie would be very conservative. I've had the same job for 30 years, the same wife for 30 years, the same hobby, role-playing games for 45 years. Your movie comes as so dynamic, international travel, spontaneous decisions. So you really grabbed my attention with the introduction of going to the film, seeing your film, and realizing that your film would be so different than mine. I love the dichotomy. You have this spontaneous life, and yet you are also the director, the writer, the editor of that film. By the way, I pity your editor. But it was a really nice dichotomy between the control and the spontaneous movie that you are filming. From there, you had very effective transition into what your writer and your editor were after. I want to have a great life. I'm accountable for the story I write. I wasn't always the leading lady in my story. I dated people who weren't leading man material. And then you have that wonderful transition to going to Mexico and just getting a lease. And then you bring it to the obituaries, which is inherently the idea that you've got to, all the stories end. And so while you're living the spontaneous life, while you're looking back at what you've done, what you're doing now, and what you want it to be, the story will come to a close. And how do you want that to happen? It really was spontaneous while keeping the end in mind, while being spontaneous. I thought it was a delightful combination of those two. In terms of your opportunities, I have two things. One of the things that you might consider if you were doing the speech again is to include a small part of your speech about the unexpected. Those days when you were planning to film the sunny scene and it rained. How do you handle those things? And specifically in the speech, you had those interruptions. They were very disruptive and they caused me to lose the thread of your speech while I was taken away of what they were saying and what was going on. You could have, as the writer, as the editor, have seized control and restored the narrative, reminding people of what you were saying before the interruptions occurred. Difficult people in a speech or in an audience are very painful, but it's always possible to take that control back, acknowledge them, but then move on with whatever you were saying anyway. That was a strong speech, beautiful metaphor, great focus, which is a very hard thing to do on such a broad and spontaneous topic, but you managed to keep the focus. The one thing I'd say was, while the unexpected happens, it's an opportunity to rewrite on the fly. I'm a guest evaluator, but I would love to hear you speak again. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Madam General Evaluator.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I take my hat off to you as well for catching that there were some interrupters in the house, okay? Actually, I didn't think she did a bad job at all getting rid of an interrupter like me. She told me she'll get back to it. So that was pretty good. Now, we have Evaluator 3, which would have been Joni Renee, evaluating effective listening for Graham table topics. But since she has not returned, I will be able to do an evaluation. Graham, well, fellow Toastmasters, guest, and especially Graham, what an interesting opportunity that you had today as Table Topics Master, not just to be in charge of the meeting, but also to show off and demonstrate how you listen. I know that it's Stephen Covey who said most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. So I applaud you that, as you said in your presentation, better listening, better thinking, better speaking. You did an excellent job. And Dale Carnegie also says one of the rules that I teach my kids is that always listen for the key words in the reply. You masterfully did that for every speech, and I didn't get all of them, but from dissertations, you tied it into works, and then you had a question about, well, when you worked, you were a cleaner, and what did you listen to, and you went to favorite songs, and there were so many different ways that you went from getting people to talk about serial killers, but you hoped that they weren't that if they did a major achievement, and you did all that by listening so that you could decide what you could share that resonated with others as well as made sense. I loved what you did. And as a matter of fact, so did other people, because Kelly, let's see if I can get back to me. Kelly actually said that she liked some song about singing in the rain, and technology can sometimes give you a little run for your money, but she, just a second here, there, now, no, it did not happen, but guess Kelly, she said she had a similar story with the ruining of the song Singing in the Rain, and also Jim Barber said he still believes in Santa. So your segues and other Table Topics answers gave other people in the audience an opportunity to enjoy the speech. So I thank you for that. And the last one, I think, was Tracy said, great questions, Graham, great questions. So I need to I am going to have to fix my technology. That will teach me. But what you taught me is that we had a great time listening to you. So let me turn off everything and come back to you. And now let's go to my other helpers. My timer, Sarah, I'll get back to you in a moment, but let's go to the Wizard of Oz, our eye counter, Carrie Kong. How did we do?
Hello, Dr. Sunny. And then because of the number of people here, so I'm going to highlight the most important ones I'm going to talk about today. I think most people do really nice jobs, much better than me in the arms and ahs, because you're very skillful Toastmasters, especially look at our Jim Barber. He almost made no mistakes at all. So this is our motto of the day. But for other people, It's usually proportional to the length of their speech. So we can see a lovely David, and then he has some and so, a couple of but. For Chaser, you have 5 and some so and so well, and you know. For other people, we're generally doing really well. Sherry has some and Lonnie has some wells. Dr. Sunny, you have some but, and also for Kayla, you have some and so. But other than that, I feel most people you're doing perfectly. Usually slowing down your speech will help you to reduce those filler words. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the compliment to my posterior. Oh, you meant my counting words. Oh, okay, never mind. Next up, we have our grammarian, Dr. Andrew Byrne. Please welcome him to the virtual stage to tell us how we did with the King's English.
The king spoke well, and as many people understood, I was focused in on the grammar of hats. Several people used hat. I have hat both in speaking and in my picture over here with a cat and a hat. Everyone had great hats. There were a lot of great speeches, and I don't have time to go through each of them, but I just wanted to let you know, I'm listening. Your grammar is good, and you're doing really well. You're the envy of everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, but not forever. Next up, somebody's got to be watching what's going on. Let's welcome Dr. Michael Alexander to the virtual stage. How did we do, sir? Backgrounds, facial expressions, whatever you'd like to share.
Thank you very much. First of all, our guests had a common background, which identified us, which I thought worked very well. First of all, made it clear who we were, and made it clear that we were coming as a group. I thought that was wonderful. I like to warn everybody that when you wear a hat, you have to worry about the shadows that it creates. Some of us did fine on that, and some of us had our hats in shadows. Be careful of that. I'm not going to give the full list, but there were some smiles here that just marvelous. Dr. Sunny, you particularly are in that category. And I said to myself, you know, I want to make sure I move her to the top so that I'm seeing her whenever I'm giving a speech. And I think everybody probably should look at themselves at least once in the audience and say, would I want to be someone that I was looking at if I was speaking? And the answer is yes, you're doing good. And if it's not, ask yourself, am I smiling enough? Am I reacting? Am I not giving the speaker what they want? So thank you to all of you who did that. It was wonderful. Don't get too close to the camera, as some of us did. I would like to suggest, for example, our first speaker, David, whenever you show a word slide on the side, and it's as small as that was, and it's hard to read, I concentrate on trying to figure out what it is I'm not able to read. So you might want to just enlarge it or pick a small section of it rather than give us everything. Similarly, Dr. Sunny, when you did those banners across the bottom, if you'd been full size, those would have been great. Instead, the hats off to everybody. Again, I was squinting it in and not able to read it properly. Your technical problems. I won't give you a hard time about that. I will say to everybody, though, when you have virtual backgrounds, you need to be careful to see if you're going to disappear into it. Now, I had a hat which occasionally disappeared into the background. Marianne, I love the fact that you matched my hat. I thought that was great. But the white ears against the white background really disappeared. In general, I see a lot of in meetings where people are drinking and their glass disappears or anything else. So be careful of that. Learn that on your gestures. With that, I'll stop, except to say, good work, everybody. But ask yourselves, yes, Lonnie, it's not your glass that disappears quickly. We've seen you, it's the contents that disappear too quickly. And that's why sometimes you see 2 or 3 of me on your screen. It's not my camera. Thank you all. I turn things back to General Byron.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that detailed and very helpful evaluations with our backgrounds and tech difficulty and all that. I didn't realize how much fun we were having. Time flies when we're having fun, but my, we're going to get a quick chat monitor report from Marianne Grady. Marianne, what's
You
going
touched
on?
some of the things already, so that was great. So I am just going to say, Dungeons and Toast, you added a lot to our chat. We are all interested to hear what you guys had to say. And Michael, thank you so much for bringing all your friends with you tonight. It was great to have you all here. Back to you, Sunny.
Thank you so much. And overall evaluation, we had great guests, great table topics, and only one little thing, Graham. If you remember, although there may only be one guest here, on the replay there may be many guests who may not be as familiar with table topics, so it doesn't hurt to practice and explain. We all did great. What a great table topics and what a great theme for Hats Off. It made it so fun. Thank you, Jim Barbershop. You are the best. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for. Let's find out from our vote counter who our winners are. Let's do this.
That's me.
Our vote counter. Yes.
That's me. I'm now not muted. All right, great. So a lot of people voted for the 2 speakers, and I've never seen this before, but it's Traca 10, David 0. So I want to say I think both of you did a fabulous job. It was completely different kinds of speeches, but everybody was so taken by Traca's speech. It was like, I think we all got pretty motivated there. And then we also had let's see, there was evaluations, right? And that was even tie. There was only 4 people that voted, so 2 for Sherry and 2 for Greg. And then I think the table topics, I had 4 votes come in, and it was 2 for Kayla, 1 for Patrick, and 1 for Kenneth. And that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Congratulations for those who won. And if you were tied, that means everybody's a winner who was in that group. Thank you very much for everybody. And I am going to turn it back to our Toastmaster of the Day. It's been a pleasure watching everybody and listening. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day, Jim Barber, Shop.
Thank you, Sunny. I'm not going to hang on to it for long. I just wanted to say hats off to everybody for being here this evening and for participating. And also special hats off to Greg for stepping up as an evaluator when we needed one. Thank you so much, Greg. And with that, I'm going to return control to El Presidente, Marianne Grady.
Well, thank you, Jim. Wonderful job. And welcome. And I am so happy to have all of you people here tonight, all you guests. But I am going to stop the recording, but I did want to visit with you and find out what you thought of the meeting tonight.